Right, let's continue talking cricket now. This week, Proteas coach Rob Walter and Shukri Conrad announced 3 squads in the for the limited overs and test matches against India. The tour started today, as mentioned earlier on, which will be followed by 3 ODIs and 2 test series, I should say. Commentator Hussein Manack joins me via Zoom to provide some insight into that. Hussein, thank you so much for joining us. Quite unfortunate, that match in Durban. What did you make of those conditions? And also, can we stop perhaps taking cricket to Durban? Because it always does this.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, and I think particularly for the people in Durban, I think they also would probably be quite frustrated, the fact that, when there is an international game, that it gets washed out. So, yeah, I mean, I think we feel for everybody. And, there's not too many T20 matches left for the Proteas before the T20 World Cup next year. So they would like to try and get as many in as they possibly can. Particularly after that 50-over World Cup. Of course, it was 50 overs, but still, I think, with the type of squad that they'll be looking for to put together for the T20 World Cup next year, probably try and get as many games as they possibly can. I think that would help.
Yeah.
I mean, look, weather is the one thing we always say we can't control, So
yeah, it was quite unfortunate because it was a sold-out affair. I mean, I must say, Durbanites do know how to show up at stadiums. Whether it's football, cricket, or rugby, they're always packed up. But let's talk about those squad. I mentioned that both coaches selected their squad now for the short format as well as Test cricket against India. Can you provide insight into the selection process? Do you believe, for both squads against India?
Yeah, I think it's. Selection is a tricky one. I think I've been, on the selection panel there for about 6 years. So, and now what's happening is there isn't really a selection panel. But what they do have is they've handed the coach, he becomes the sole selector. So in this instance, Rob Walter has put the squad together, and he's...
Keshav Maharaj as well as Aiden Makram are the only 2 players from the 50 World Cup squad that are in all squad and in all 3 formats. Shouldn't have someone, especially someone like Keshav who just came back from a serious injury, maybe shouldn't they have rested as well? Maybe rested for one of either the ODIs or the T20 and then come back for test or in one of the short format series.
I mean, that is a possibility, if you, the advantage of resting players, and now, over the years, I've always felt that sometimes players, the public may think that, listen, when you rest a player, it weakens the team. I think it's good holistically, because when you rest and rotate players, what you're really doing is you're seeing and you're allowing the depth of your system to be tested. And when you test your depth, you really get to see what they're capable of. So, for example, you say a lot of players are being rested. It gives opportunities to a number of players. I mean, if Maharaj gets rested, somebody like a Fortin may get an opportunity to play. Somebody else comes in. So it gives those additional players an opportunity to come through and gives them exposure and opportunities as well.
Speaking of chances, Michal Mpongwana has been added to add depth into all-rounders. Rob Walter talked about him in his press conference. We've seen someone like Marco Jansen who's shown potential. Andy Lepetlwa has been in the system for a while. Do you believe Mpongwana then is a future for this role, especially considering how much South Africa have struggled, in the all-rounder department over the years?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, if you go back, and I'll remember when I first got into the panel, it was at the time when Jacques Kallis was just about retiring. So Jacques Kallis is, he was one of South Africa's greatest all-rounders. In fact, one of the greatest all-rounders that played the game. You could compare him to players like the greats, like Sir Garfield Sobers, Imran Khan, Kapil Dev, those guys. So the one thing about all-rounders in South African cricket, we have, since Jacques Kallis, we for some reason just haven't haven't produced many all-rounders. So the thing about having all-rounders is these days, the amount of cricket that they play, it's not easy to have an all-rounder who can bat in the top order, score hundreds, win games, as well as come in and run in and bowl, and you probably need to bowl 10 overs in a 50-over game. That's not always easy. So, we produce very few, and Jansen's been one of them. Jan Mulder's been another one. So it's good to see more and more young all-rounders coming through, and I think we will start to see. I mean, look at the other I think as far as all-rounders go, the other thing to look at is spinning all-rounders. Because if I look around the world now, if you look at in Test cricket, in your rankings, probably the 2 or 3 top-ranked players as far as world all-rounders go are spinning all-rounders. If you look at somebody like a Jadeja, he's one of the best in the world. They win games with the bat and they win games with the ball. Ashwin win games with the bat and win games with the ball. So I think the amount of cricket that internationally that South Africa are now playing on the subcontinent, on pitches that turn, and even in South Africa, the weather's changing. It's not as cool as it used to be. It's a lot hotter. It's drier. You may well find a role for spinning all-rounders in international cricket, and maybe that's something South Africa may want to look at. But it's good to see Pongwana and youngsters like him coming through. It gives them an opportunity, to see what they can. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can produce and get runs and wickets at domestic level, but it's really good to see them be given an opportunity at international level.
Yeah, any other newbies that caught your attention in those 3 squads, especially in the view of Quinton de Kock retiring from the longer formats?
I mean, I'm just trying to, forgive me, Kate, I mean, do you have the list of the squad there with you? And I'm being a bit naughty here because I haven't really had a full look at the squad. If you've got it with me, give me some of the names, because, I mean, and I know I had the interview planned with you, but it's just been such a busy day. Give me the names, and I know you're gonna knock me on the knuckles here for being naughty.
I mean, I can do that, but you know what? We're gonna run out of time. But I know someone like Nando Berger is in there. There was no space for Dewald Brevis, though. Let's see. Let's look at the T20 squad. Okay, we're gonna do television very differently right now at SABC because I've got my phone with me. Okay, so we're gonna say what we're looking for: Proteas squad, right? Okay, while we look for that squad, tell me, is someone like Faf du Plessis still be in contention then?
I mean, look here, if you're talking for a World Cup, I would definitely look at somebody like a Faf. I think he would be amazing, particularly because, when you go to World Cups, I mean, let's look at this 50-over World Cup, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at the team that won this 50-over World Cup, Australia. You look at the other team that made it to the final, India. If I look at their batting lineups and their bowling lineups, you're going to find very, very few youngsters in those teams. So, yes, and I think South Africa, the one thing we get excited about, and I think it's good to get excited about young talent, but the one thing Australia and countries like India have realized over the years is that if you've got a talented youngster and you bring him through, it's an exception rather than a rule. You have a Tendulkar who comes in at the age of 16, 18. Listen, he's once in a lifetime type of a player that will come and knock the door down, and you feel you can put him in. But have a look at those 2 teams that made the final of the 50-over World Cup. Bulk of those players, match-winning players, were all senior players in their late 20s, maybe even in their 30s. Have a look at the Australian bowling lineup. Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood. Right, all experienced Test players over 30 years old. Have a look at the Indian bowling lineup. Mohammad Shami, Bumrah, those guys are all experienced. So, while I appreciate and understand the fact that South Africans, we love getting excited about all these young players like Brevis and that, and they certainly do have the talent, Janssen, all these points. We get terribly excited, and rightly so, and we should. I think we need to be careful about pushing youngsters into World Cups and expecting them to then perform miracles. I mean, with the greatest of respect, and it's really not a slight on Janssen or anybody else, or the coach, anybody that put him in the side. And Janssen has done well. But compare Janssen to Hazelwood, compare Janssen to Cummins, compare Janssen to Stark. And Janssen's opening the bowling in a knockout game in the World Cup on a world stage. Who's better equipped to handle the pressure? Is it Janssen, or is it Hazelwood, Stark, or Cummins, or Bumrah, or Mohammad Shami? And for me, that's where I think South Africa need to be. Just take a step back and go like, listen, let's take a breather. Let's breathe and go like, who is better equipped? Is it a Rabada? Because Rabada's got the experience.
Got you.
Faf du Plessis, now you mentioned the name there. There's Faf du Plessis, who's played all around the world, who's probably playing in the best form of his life, who understands the conditions all around the world, one who's probably played against every international player in world cricket, who's vastly experienced. I would put him in my team with my eyes closed. It's not even a thought. So that's, I think, we sometimes get it wrong. We leave out the experienced players and we're pushing these youngsters. Sometimes I think we're pushing them too early. There's no criticism on the youngsters. It really is just about bringing them in at the right time, give them the experience, let them play years of domestic cricket, let them really go, have their ups, downs, and go through all the challenges and come out and understand their game a lot better, like the Hazelwood, Starks, and the Cummins. And I'm really not saying we shouldn't pick youngsters. I think we should pick them, but we just need to be careful about how many we pick and not pushing them in too soon.
Yeah, quite a great point, because Rory Kleinfeld this week also said that someone like Mihlali may have, he thought his call-up maybe a season early. He's a bit surprised about that. But let's give you other names that are there. Notable other inclusion include David Benningham, also from Western Province. We've got Nanda Berg, as I've mentioned. We've got Tristan Stubbs now returning as well, and I do believe he's going to be included in the Test series for the first time. Carl Verena returns in both, I do believe, Test as well as ODIs. Then you've got Dolphins spin bowler Otniel Bartman, not his first, but like obviously somebody South Africans have not been exposed to. So what do you make of those names? Because Lizard Williams also returns. You've got Donovan Ferreira as well in there, who's also returning to the squad. So a lot of youngsters in both compositions, especially in the white ball squad.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's just go through those names. I think Nandri Berger has done well. He's not entirely a youngster, and he's got a bit of experience. What I like about a lot of these names is some of these players have been in the system, they've been through the mill, they've been challenged. Lizard Williams has played a number of years, lots of experience there, different conditions. I mean, probably the newbies there would be like a Donovan Ferreira, have come into the squad now recently. Verena is vastly experienced, so he's really got a lot of experience behind him. I think he's a good selection because he's obviously played in all conditions. He gives you the sense of that he can give you some stability. When the team's under pressure, he could come in and perform. Stubbs as well. I mean, he's of course a big name. And as you say, it looks like he's going to come into the Test squad because he got a good 100 against the Lions last week for the Warriors. That was in Port Elizabeth. So it looks like Shukri Conrad's kind of looking at him even in the Test side. So there's some good names. David Bedingham has gone and played county cricket. He left South Africa, went and played county cricket, done very well at county cricket. He's getting a look in now here, getting an opportunity here for South Africa. So I think that's also, a good opportunity there for him. Tony Dezorzi, I mean, he's in the ODI squad. And then, I mean, the other names are like, of course, Aiden Markram's there, right? So he's your captain. Bartman, I like him as a selection. He's, as a bowler, he asks a lot of questions. He's very similar. He reminds me a lot of Vernon Philander. He bowls good at the wicket, good lines, top of off, asks a lot of questions. Not an easy batter to cope with. And then from the Warriors, he's Matthew Bretzker. I like him. Exciting talent. Obviously, he's been identified for a long time. When I was on the selection panel, I remember we brought him in almost just as a young player to be with the squad at the time. And there was some question asked, but I like those type of things. So for me, when you bring in a talented youngster, like if you, for example, brought in, I mean, what we did with Bretzker at that time, we brought him into the squad in 2 or 3 of the series, and he just was in the change room with the players. I remember at that time also when Kagiso Rabada, we took him to Zimbabwe for triangular with Australia. What we did with Rabada is we brought him into the squad and we just kind of got him to acquaint himself with the environment, to get used to the environment, because we knew there was going to be this 19-year-old youngster you're going to bring into the squad, but you wanted him almost to fit in to the squad. So we took him to Zimbabwe. When he was with the squad, he got to meet the senior players. He met the cock. He met, at that time, Abby de Villiers, Hashim Amla. They all had chats to him. And he practiced with them for a long time, And when we eventually selected him, he fitted right in. He almost felt totally at home. So for me, I like those type of things. So the fantastic youngsters that we talk about that have all the talent and that do well at domestic level, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come in international and just fly straight away. But I think it's important that you almost pave the way for them. So when they come and eventually they do play, that the environment, they fit right in, they feel comfortable in the change room. That's a very big thing. I think a large part of the success of a young player is how they fit in, how they accept it in the change room. That's a huge thing. And I think psychologically, from the outside, sometimes we don't quite see that. You know,
Yeah.
many people in the public just say, listen, pick this guy, pick that guy because he's such a brilliant youngster. I mean, the other guy that's in the squad there, I think in the
You said,
T20
unfortunately,
he's a
that's all the
Hendricks.
time we have for you. We've already gone over time, but I am convinced that all those players will fit right into the structures, as you've mentioned, like with the way we've seen with Kagiso Rabada and all these other guys. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. I mean, we can talk about this in depth another time. I mean, we can go on for another hour. Pardon me. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. That's ex-selector Hussein Manack, who's currently an SABC sport commentator. So do join him when the series does continue. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for him now. Looking at the composition of the squad as South Africa look to take on India.